She laughed with her friends and said, "If my ex texted me right now, I'd leave him instantly." She thought it was just a joke, but that night I let her prove herself, and she lost everything. My name is Mike. I am 32, and for most of my life I have believed in thinking carefully before acting. I am someone who likes to plan things, to understand cause and effect, to make sure every step I take leads to the right outcome. That is how I see the world. Actions bring reactions, and every choice has a price. My girlfriend Sarah, who is 27, could not be more different from me. She thrives in chaos, always moving from one social event to another, surrounded by jokes, noise, and a constant storm of drama. For a long time I thought maybe we balanced each other out. I was the solid ground, and she was the tornado dancing around me. But over time, I realized that I was not a balance at all. I was just the rock she stood on while she spun out her endless games. A huge part of Sarah's chaos always seemed to revolve around her ex-boyfriend, a man named David. They had broken up 3 years ago, but in our relationship, it felt like he was always there. She would constantly mention him, how David loved a certain restaurant, how a trip reminded her of him, how he used to do this or that. It was a never-ending chain of comparisons, a subtle reminder that I was living in a space he had once occupied. I am not a jealous person by nature, but I am careful and I pay attention to patterns. And the pattern here was obvious. She was not over him. One time, I tried to talk to Sarah calmly about how much it bothered me. I wanted to handle it rationally, to be honest about my feelings. But instead of a real conversation, I got a week full of tears, accusations that I was trying to control her, and dramatic phone calls to her friends where she painted me as someone who did not trust her. I learned my lesson that week. Direct confrontation would get me nowhere. She would just twist the story until somehow I became the villain. So I did what made sense to me. I quietly began to make my own plan. A backup plan, a contingency plan, for the day I knew would eventually come. Over the next few months, I prepared without her knowing. I installed a small wide-angle security camera in our living room pointing at the front door. I told her it was for safety, which was true. I also bought a cheap burner phone with a prepaid SIM card, something to keep hidden in my desk drawer. I called it my break in case of emergency kit. I honestly hoped I would never need to use it. But that Friday night, the emergency finally came. We were at a local bar with some of her friends, celebrating a birthday. Sarah had a few drinks in her and was talking loudly, telling stories, enjoying being the center of attention. I was sitting beside her quietly with a beer, just trying to get through the evening. That was when her friend Chloe decided to stir things up. She looked at Sarah and said with a smile, "I saw David the other day. He asked about you." Sarah's eyes lit up immediately. She began asking questions. What did he look like now? Did he have a girlfriend? How was he doing? It turned into a whole conversation about him, as if his ghost still sat at the table with us. Then came the moment that changed everything. Sarah, feeling bold in front of her friends, looked around the table and then directly at me. She smirked and said loudly, "If David texted me right now, this very second, asking me to leave with him, I'd go instantly. I'd leave Mike without thinking twice." Her friends burst into laughter, the sound sharp and cruel. They thought it was a great joke, the funniest thing they had heard all night. I did not get angry. I did not argue. I just smiled, calm and neutral, and said softly, "Be careful what you wish for." She laughed again, waving it off as if it was nothing. But for me, that was the final proof I needed. The breaking point had arrived, and it was time to put my plan into motion. I went back to our apartment around 1 a.m., quiet enough to feel like we had the whole building to ourselves. Sarah was still giddy from the party when we walked in. She kicked off her shoes and collapsed face down on the bed almost immediately, her phone left on the nightstand unlocked and silent. I told her I would stay up for a bit, and she grunted something that meant she did not care. As soon as the bedroom door clicked shut behind her, I walked to my desk and opened the drawer where I had hidden the cheap burner phone and the prepaid SIM card. I pulled it out, turned it on, and used a small app to spoof David's number. It took less than 5 minutes, just a few taps to make the phone display look legit. Then I composed a short message, simple and believable. Hey, it's David. Chloe told me she saw you tonight and I can't stop thinking about you. I miss you. Are you up? I sent the text to her number and then turned on the living room security camera feed on my second monitor. I put my headphones on, laid back in my chair, and pretended to browse the internet while I watched a small silent window on the screen. Patience has always been one of my strengths, so I sat and waited. Around 2:15 in the morning, the bedroom door opened quietly and Sarah slipped out, her phone held like a beacon in the dark. She was biting her lip, eyes bright with nervous excitement, totally unaware that the camera was filming her every move. She stood by the front door and began typing feverishly. A few minutes later, a giddy smile spread across her face. She looked at her phone once more, then crept back into the bedroom. 5 minutes after that, she reemerged, this time changed into jeans and a sweater, carrying a weekend duffel and her main purse. Her movements were quick and purposeful, her eyes flicking toward the door and then toward my desk as if to make sure I was still preoccupied. She slipped on her shoes, took a final look around the apartment that had been both our home and her stage, and quietly closed the front door behind her. When the door clicked shut, I took off my headphones and felt a calmness wash over me. I saved the security footage, a crystal clear 2-minute clip of her receiving a text, smiling, packing a bag, and sneaking out in the middle of the night. I transferred the file to an encrypted drive and labeled it with the date and time. Then I began the work I had planned for weeks. First, I double-bolted the door from the inside to make sure she could not simply return and create a scene. Then I went digital. I logged her out of every streaming account we shared, changed the password to the home Wi-Fi, and removed her as an authorized user from the joint credit card after paying off the small balance I knew was there. I knew I could have done this messily or publicly, but I wanted a clean break. Next, I turned to her physical possessions. I did not want multiple trips or the drama of her coming back to collect things one item at a time. I had bought moving boxes weeks earlier for exactly this possibility. For the next 3 hours, I worked like a machine, folding shirts, stacking shoes, sliding books into boxes, snapping photos of framed pictures before I packed them. I labeled 27 boxes with simple tags: clothes, shoes, books, photos, and stacked them neatly by the door. I was detached, focused only on the task. When the sun started to rise, I took the burner phone out, snapped it in half, and tossed it into an electronics recycling bin on my way to the gym. The operation felt complete. Shortly after 7:30, the first message came through from the real David, the one who had not sent the spoof text. "Where are you?" it said. "I'm at the coffee shop we used to go to. I've been waiting for an hour." He sounded confused. I screenshot the text and saved it with the video. At 9 o'clock, my phone began to ring constantly. Sarah called and texted in a frenzy. "Mike, open the door. This isn't funny. Answer your phone." The messages shifted from confusion to panic to accusation within minutes. When I finally picked up, her voice was high and breaking. She shouted demands to be let in. I spoke quietly. I told her calmly that she no longer lived here. She was not on the lease, and her belongings were packed. I explained that I had witnessed her packing and leaving to meet an ex. There was a beat of silence and then begging. I hung up after telling her that movers would collect her boxes at noon and deliver them to her parents' house. I blocked her number. I walked through the apartment and felt something I had not felt in a long time. Peace. The movers arrived right on time at noon. I had hired professionals, so there would be no show. They loaded the 27 boxes and took them to her parents' suburban address, where the lead mover texted me later that afternoon. "Delivery complete. Homeowner signed." I was prepared for backlash, so I was not surprised when the smear campaign began that evening. Sarah's friends took to social media with a simple, effective narrative. A brave woman escaping a controlling relationship after a terrifying incident. They spoke in generalities, but their meaning was clear. Accusations of manipulation, psychological abuse, and tech-savvy control were levied without naming names. Mutual acquaintances started sending angry messages. Some people I knew unfriended me based solely on the story they had been told. It was disappointing but predictable. I could have engaged in an online fight, but that was exactly the kind of drama she wanted. I decided to use facts instead. I waited until the story reached its peak, which happened when Sarah posted a long, tearful Instagram note about how she had been unceremoniously discarded after a terrifying night with a man who did not trust her. She framed herself as the victim and collected hundreds of sympathetic comments. That was the moment I chose to act. I pulled together the evidence, the video from the security camera, the screenshot of the real David's confused message, and the timestamps that matched each event. I created a private, password-protected web page on a personal server. It had a clean layout. The headline said the truth about last Friday night, and underneath I embedded the 2-minute video followed by the screenshot of the message from David. At the bottom I wrote one short paragraph. This is what really happened. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a choice. I sent the link and the password to 3 people only: Sarah's mother, Sarah's father, and Chloe, her closest friend. The email was simple and direct. I did not argue or plead my case publicly. The effect was instant. The video and the screenshot blew a hole in the narrative that had been carefully constructed online. Her parents, who had been vocal supporters of her story, saw the reality of their daughter giggling at a message, packing a bag, and sneaking out to meet another man. I heard later that they were humiliated and angry. The financial support they had been providing to fuel her drama was cut back sharply. Chloe went quiet. The online cheerleading stopped. The story that had painted her as a victim suddenly looked very different when there was clear, undeniable proof of her own actions. 5 months later, the silence from her circle was complete. The private web page had functioned as a kill switch for the image she had created. People who had rallied around her felt foolish once the video was seen by those who matched the story to the evidence. David himself posted a short statement on Facebook clarifying that he had not been in contact with Sarah for over a year, that he was in a committed relationship, and that he had not texted her. His message was the final nail that undid her version of events. Sarah, for her part, moved out of the glamorous social life she had claimed to love. Without the same financial support she had relied on, she took a second job and began sharing a small apartment with 2 roommates. Her life had become quiet and harder. I heard all of this through the usual channels: mutual friends who reached out tentatively, the occasional text from someone who said they were sorry for believing the other story. As for me, I did not revel in public humiliation or savor the drama online. The satisfaction I felt came from restoring my own peace and from moving forward without chaos in my home. The apartment felt like a sanctuary again. I threw myself into work and began dating casually. I met someone new, a teacher who was grounded and kind, and our conversations were about practical things and the future, not about appearances or performing pain on social media. In the end, the most effective response was simple. I did not give her the fight she wanted. I did not engage in the loud, messy drama she craved. I collected the facts, presented them to the right people, and let the truth speak for itself. She had joked that she would leave me instantly for her ex. I let her prove the joke was true, and then I walked away from the theater of it all. My life moved on, quieter and better organized, while hers unraveled under the weight of choices she had made.